All right. Good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I think we can start now. Um, Thank you, everyone, from joining us from across Southeast and East Asia and beyond. We are very happy to see a lot of attendees, not only from our region in Southeast and East Asia, but also other regions, no, in the world. So thank you so much for joining us in this webinar on toxic footprints, microplastics, and the hidden crisis. And this webinar is being organized by the IPEN Southeast and East Asia Regional Hub with the Eco Waste Coalition, Ecoton, Nexus 3 Foundation, Sahabat Alam Malaysia, and the Environmental Justice Foundation. Microplastics have emerged as a significant global concern, with growing evidence showing their pervasive presence in the environment, including water, soil, air, and even within the human body. And these tiny plastic particles contribute to pollution and may also carry toxic chemicals that pose the risks to the ecosystems and the human health. Um, in fact, no, in 2024, a study by the Cornell University revealed that Southeast Asian countries such as Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines have the highest microplastic intake among 109 countries. Imagine that. And these findings confirm that microplastics are not just an environmental pollutant, but a growing public health concern that demands the urgent regional action. So that is why this webinar was conceptualized, and we aim to first raise our everyone's awareness, no, about the science and health impacts of microplastics, highlight some information and data from the region and also globally, and also discuss urgent policy actions and citizen-led efforts needed to tackle the issue. And for this webinar, we're very fortunate and we are grateful that we have invited speakers from national, regional, and international organizations to discuss the environmental and health risks of microplastics, as well as to share their insights. We have invited speakers to share their insights and ongoing initiatives to address this important concern in the region and also beyond. So just a few reminders, we are recording this webinar, and we are also live, no, at the Eco Waste Coalition Facebook page, and we're sharing it on the IPNC Facebook page. And for the Q&A later, you feel free to type in your questions on the Q&A chat box. All right. So to officially welcome all of us in this webinar, we've requested first Nina. She's a very young environmental activist calling for global action on plastic waste to also give us a opening message. Nina, over to you.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nina from River Warrior, Indonesia. And I'm so happy and I'm honored to open today's discussion on microplastics and their hidden impacts. So I grew up loving the river near my house. Clear water, clean environment, fish, and peace. But now these rivers have turned into polluted canals full of plastic waste, full of pollutants from the industry. And I've seen how plastic pollution destroys our nature and harming our communities. And the scariest part is, of course, microplastics. The tiny particles that we cannot even see are everywhere. They're in our air, our water we drink, our food we eat, and even inside our bodies. The scientists have found them in human lungs, in our blood, in breast milk, even in the placenta, affecting the unborn babies. Is there any safe place left? This crisis isn't just about individuals. We need real action from the government and the industries also. We need a treaty that ban toxic chemicals in plastic, stop producing single-use plastic, and move toward reuse and sustainable alternatives. We need upstream solutions like preventing pollution from the start, not just cleaning it up after. We need to redesign single-use plastic packaging, reduce plastic use, and fight for the stronger global regulation. I'm deeply worried for myself, for the future generation, and yeah, the future generation, the children that who will grow up in this kind of world. We don't want to live in a future where microplastics are everywhere in our skin, in our air we breathe, in our bodies, in our water. We have rights to live in a safe, clean, and healthy environment free from toxic plastic chemicals and microplastic. We deserve better. I'm excited to learn from all of you, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Nina. First, I have to say, I'm very sorry for making you worry, for the future. But also, thank you for all the work that you do, being a very young advocate. And yes, we are grateful for your presence and also what you do. No, very being a very young environmental activist. So thank you so much. So this time, I'm going to request Therese Carlson, the IPEN Science and Technical Advisor, to also provide us with of global, she will share about the insights on why microplastics is a growing global concern and also what IPEN do in this, in addressing this concern. Therese, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shinky. Okay, so I've been working with microplastics and plastics in general for a bit more than 10 years. And in the beginning, what I was doing, I was spending endless hours in front of the microscope trying to understand where it came from, how it moved in the environment, and what kind of consequences it could have. And one thing I learned is that it often comes from larger pieces of plastic, so these problems are all connected. They can also move over large distances, but their properties depend a lot on what kind of materials they are, what kind of size, and what kind of shape that they have. So it's a really complex group of pollutants. But what I've also learned over the years is that aside from the physical harm that these particles can in some cases cause, for example, through blocking in the intestinal tract of seabirds, they're also carrying chemicals with them because plastics are chemicals. So we've done global studies where we looked at plastic pellets, which is small pieces of microplastics. The definition of microplastics is plastic pieces below 5 millimeters. So these are small pieces of millimeter-sized plastics that end up in the environment even before they become products. So we've looked at beaches from over 20 countries, and we found toxic chemicals in all the samples. And we also did one study where we looked at recycled plastics, where from 23 countries, where we also found an even more complicated mix of toxic chemicals, including chemicals that have been banned. So for me, this highlights that plastics are not inert materials. They are chemicals in and of themselves, many of which are toxic. And increasing amounts of research have shown that plastics are continuously leaching and transporting and sorbing chemicals, including to remote locations. In the study where we looked at recycled plastics, we did a follow-up study later, and there we found that these microplastics had sorbed pesticides and pharmaceuticals, either from the waste management process or during use. We can't trace that, but what we can see is that it ends up being very complex pollutants. And one of the ways that we at IPEN are trying to address these issues is through through the emerging negotiations on the plastics treaty. Because again, when I spent all those hours and all those years looking at small plastic pieces, it became more and more clear that in order to address these issues, you need to work upstream, just as Nina was saying. These are issues that needs to be addressed upstream. So for the plastics treaty, we're trying to really raise the importance of having global controls because these are global problems. And in the future treaty, we're going to need mechanisms to eliminate toxic chemicals. We're also going to need provisions on transparency because today there's no way of knowing what kind of chemicals that is in the plastics that we're using. And we need mechanisms to reduce production because their amounts of plastics that are being produced today are simply unmanageable in and of itself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Therese. Yeah, thank you for giving us the global overview of how this concern or issue on microplastics now is really a global concern that we need also to work on a global control so that our efforts, even our efforts at the national and also local levels, will um, uh, uh, while we contribute to the to addressing these issues, but we really need to have this regulated globally. And also we already have like a lot of studies and researches that we've already done that uh, reveal that these microplastics or plastics are chemicals and that they are leaching the environment and also affecting, of course, the environment and our health. So thank you so much again, Therese. So yeah, so we will now go to the main presentations. We've invited three main speakers, and one we're very happy and grateful to him that he agreed to share with us his knowledge and expertise this afternoon. I'm gonna call on our first keynote speaker. He's Joe Yates, who is the co-director of the Agriculture, Nutrition and Health Academy at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Joe will discuss how microplastics intersect with our food systems and the risks they pose to health and nutrition. Joe, please take the floor. And yeah, again, thank you so much for giving us this time. Thank you. And
Um, thanks for having me. Really appreciate the invitation, and thanks to everyone for all the inspirational words we've heard already. And it's great to be part of this discussion. So yeah, I'm going to talk about plastics in the food system and food chains, and discuss a little bit about how they get there and what the consequences may be for human health. So I think it's fair to say that we do have emerging evidence now that microplastics are entering the human body, and there's a presence evidence emerging for their presence in different places. This is a new field of scientific inquiry, relatively new, and standardization for the methods and analytical tools for understanding this is still kind of in progress. But one thing I wanted to emphasize and to echo what Teresa said and what's been said by Chinky is that we know enough already about plastic chemicals to act robustly on plastics and to protect humans and the environment. And we also know a lot about many of the indirect effects on microplastic pollution in soils, for instance, and in the environment to take a precautionary approach. And that is really something I want to stress here in this talk. But first, I wanted to sort of talk about the food system and why is this an important framing for plastics pollution. Many people will be familiar with the food systems terminology. It encompasses the entire range of actors and activities involved across the production, aggregation, processing, distribution, consumption, and disposal of food products, including the economic, societal, and natural environments in which this all takes place. Plastics are absolutely widespread and some would say integral across modern food systems, but at the same time, it's fair to say that modern food systems are simply not delivering for most of the people on this planet, and they are not delivering for the planet even. And this can be demonstrated through some illustrative facts that, for instance, diet is the number one global risk factor in the global burden of disease. Ultra processed foods, which have all manner of adverse health outcomes, are expanding rapidly, and in particular across Southeast Asia and Southern Asia. Over 2.8 billion people around the world can't afford to realize their right to food. And the way that we're producing and consuming foods and supplying them is driving a range of injustices and ecosystems and biodiversity collapse. And in the background, we have increasing corporate concentration of power and influence. And so it's in this context that there's been a lot of calls in the last 10, 15 years for transforming our food systems completely, and understandably so. Uh, but as you can imagine, as you might agree, we and many other scientists don't believe this is possible unless you address plastics, because they're so integral to this food system we have. And we cannot fix the food system unless we fundamentally revisit why and how much plastics we use. And so with that, I'm going to then sort of illustrate why this is important and why we need to address plastics. And I think we can do that through looking at how they're entering our food systems and the food chain. And there's two really ways they're coming in. Firstly, from direct use of plastics in the food system, and secondly, from indirect societal proliferation of these materials. So I'll deal with the direct first. As you will appreciate, plastics are used like incredibly extensively across food systems. So here's some examples. These are polymer coated fertilizers that go directly into the soil and break down. This is row covers and mulches that bake in the sun on the soil, pesticide containers, bale wraps, aquaculture tanks. There are so many, fishing gear, crates and storage, processing, packaging, bottling, kitchen equipment, takeaway cups and materials, and even the waste management systems that we use plastic. To give an idea of scale, over 12.5 million tons of the stuff is used in agriculture, fisheries, and aquaculture annually. Some estimate that over 10% of China's cultivated land mass is covered in plastic. And the nearly $500 billion food packaging market is expected to grow by 60% in the next 6 years, which is quite incredible. Many, indeed a lot of food system plastics are very hard to recover, and this is why they contribute are a vital, not vital, a very important and challenging contributor to microplastic pollution on soils, in waterways, and in the air. And there's a growing body of evidence demonstrating here, for instance, in the UK, that farms using plastics have more microplastic pollution in their soils. And this is a nice depiction of the many different ways in which microplastics can emanate from farming systems and find their ways into wildlife environments, into waterways, into soils, even into the roots of and the actual plants that we then go on to eat. And this is beginning to pose some serious concerns for long-term food security, food safety, and food sovereignty. So these are the indirect effects of microplastics already out there and becoming very evident. And also, it's not just at the farm, it's of course at the post-farm situation. So packaged food, ultra-processed food, as I've mentioned before, are rapidly increasing around the world. In South Asia and Southeast Asia, there was a 67% increase in sales between 2002 and 2016. And emerging evidence from the US suggests that ultra-processed foods contain more microplastics than other foods. So what does this mean for our population exposure if we are consuming these things at such an increased rate? So I'm going to talk about the indirect flows now into our food chains from society's reliance on these materials. Here's some examples of how microplastics come from other sectors into aquatic systems, so textiles, consumer goods, cosmetics, tires, etc. These are finding their way into our food system, even though they're not being used in our food system. So the food system is a sink for our reliance on these materials. Here's some very poignant and obvious examples of how microplastics, or macroplastics in this case, can make their way into the food chain. But a lot of the examples are also hidden, like the topic of this webinar today. And you can go on Google Scholar at any point and find new studies being uploaded on a near weekly basis, looking at, for instance, seafood samples here, in the US, where almost every single sample came back with microplastic contamination. The same in shellfish in Thailand here on the top right. And at the bottom, there's a study among many looking at the manure of poultry and livestock, this time in South China, where the authors warned against some severe levels of microplastic contamination. So this is really our food chain. This is the alarm bells ringing across our food chain, telling us that there's saturation of these materials. A recent paper from Richard Thompson and colleagues looking back at 20 years of microplastics research had this really important passage I found to be important, which is, as Therese said, as plastic items fragment like macroplastics into ever smaller pieces, they become more available to a wider range of organisms, and therefore the potential of transfer along the food chain also increases. And what this picture shows us really is that almost every single animal and species on the planet now is exposed in some way to plastics in some form. So what does this mean for human health? Well, the first thing I want to echo again, which I said at the start, is plastics are simply synthetic chemicals. We know this. We know a lot about chemicals already. The Plaschem report that came out last year showed that more than 16,000 chemicals can be found in plastics, and just 6% are currently subject to international regulation. More than a quarter of these plastics, 16,000 plastics, are considered to be of concern because they are persistent, bioaccumulative, highly mobile or toxic and cause harm to living organisms. So when it comes to microplastics, yes, we see emerging evidence of them in the human body. And yes, some of this evidence is beginning to demonstrate certain causal pathways to specific things like inflammation or immune responses. But what I want to stress here is that where there are microplastics, there are chemicals. And where there are chemicals in plastics, they are most likely leaching. And so we know from decades of evidence already that chemicals at very low doses, for instance, endocrine disruptors, can mimic hormone signals and cause all kinds of health issues. They can disrupt our metabolisms, and several groups are linked to cancers. So these are the impacts that are happening from microplastics through chemicals already, and they're having indirect impacts on our public health budgets that could be spent on other forms of care and prevention. But I want to also just stress a couple of other indirect effects of microplastics too. Food security and malnutrition, which is what I work on personally. Microplastics are beginning to impact the soil functioning around the world of our soils. They're beginning to deteriorate the health of livestock, plants, and pollinators. And so we have to ask ourselves, will we be able to feed ourselves in the future if we allow this to continue? And you may have seen a study that came out not so long ago, meta-analyses bringing together many data sets on microplastics and modeling what this could mean for photosynthesis losses. And it was alarming, that up to 12% of photosynthesis could be deteriorated by microplastics. And this is a modeling study, so it comes with its caveats, but it's another alarm bell, these types of studies. Secondly, infectious disease. Again, as Therese mentioned, microplastics can sorb things as much as they can leach. So there's a growing body of evidence showing that microplastics are a fertile environment for the proliferation and the propagation of bacteria and potentially antimicrobial resistance. So what does this mean for the next superbug if we are consuming also microplastics and if they're transported globally around the world? So this is all quite concerning, and it's not necessarily the direct impacts of having microplastics in our body. So to conclude, I wanted to say a few words about, proposed responses that have been put out there. We've all seen a lot about circularity and circular food systems and circular economies. I would ask us to reflect on this and think, are we being truthful with ourselves? Can we really have a circular plastic economy when we know already that mechanical recycling can produce more microplastics and the chemical or advanced recycling is highly problematic also? As we've seen earlier, recycled materials can be just as toxic, if not more toxic, than virgin plastics. So do we want to be recycling and recirculating these back into our food chains and our food systems? And as we also heard earlier, some of the biggest sources of microplastics are yet to even break down in society. This is again from Richard Thompson's paper and colleagues, saying that even if it was possible to immediately halt our emissions, the quantities would continue to increase because of the fragmentation of legacy items. So really, I think my feeling is that we need to be more realistic about our position in the world as a species. Indigenous societies have known this for a long, 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 long time. I think Western science and other forms of science and society are beginning to catch up now to recognize that humans are deeply intertwined with the environment and animal health. And if we want to get ourselves out of this mess, the science is clearly telling us that we need to reduce our reliance upstream on these. We need to turn the tap off. We need to slow down rapidly the production of primary plastic polymers and give our systems a chance to stabilize and recover. So with that, sorry, I know I was talking very fast. I had lots to get through, but that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joe, for all the information that you've shared. And it is quite alarming to know more, that as you've said, that plastics are chemicals and so are microplastics. They're chemicals that continue to leach, in the environment, and indirectly, impacting the human health or the public health. And I also would like to say to repeat what you've said about that there is a need for real circularity. And if us, we always say that, yeah, circular economy can only be like circular if it is non-toxic circular economy that we call. Yeah, so again, thank you so much for providing us with all those very important information that hopefully will also strengthen all our awareness, enhance our awareness to reflect more and act more, in the future. So thank you so much again, Joe. So next, we have requested Ibu Yuyun Ismawati. She's the IPEN co-chair and also the senior advisor and founder of Nexus 3 Foundation. She's joining us from Geneva. She's currently attending the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Convention, but she couldn't say no because she loved us. And we will request Ibu Yuyun to share with us the regional overview on how these microplastics are affecting the environment. Ibu Yuyun, hello, good morning.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Good to see you again, Chinky.
Thank you so much. Would you like me to share your screen, Ibu? I mean, your presentation.
I can share my screen too, if I'm allowed. Yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
you are allowed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, can you see it?
Yes, I could it
Okay.
now.
Yes?
Yes. Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Chinky. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I'm joining a bit late, but thanks for the previous speakers, Nina, Therese, Joe. Thanks for your insightful presentations. It's easier for me to present because you gave the backgrounds earlier. So today we are discussing a very important topics and popular topics. But I guess this is also already been explained before, that plastics are consisted of carbon and chemicals. And then we are all well known, this is well known that our region are one of the largest contributors or producers of plastics globally, but also the largest polluters. I found this paper interesting that between 2010 and then until 2023, there is research capturing the emerging contaminants in Southeast Asia, and microplastics is one of the emerging contaminants captured in published papers in Southeast Asia. And what's interesting in this paper is that a lot of studies already conducted in our region, and most papers highlighted the severe the findings shocking that microplastics already found in all environmental matrices in our region. Like in Thailand, they found in soil, agricultural crops, and so on. Excuse me. And then in Da Nang, in Vietnam, it's in the drainage, and then with high concentration. And then in other papers, they talk about microplastics in the river, estuaries, beaches, and also in drinking water. So this is quite alarming. And factors that contributing the generation of microplastics are, there are a lot of them, but so one of it is the plastic production, of course. If the productions keep increasing, of course, we will have the source of plastic microplastics. And we're talking about the design, durability, and the lifespan of plastics. SUPs are easier to break down into microplastics and microfibers and so on. And then this is also often mentioned that the infrastructures or the enabling infrastructures inadequate in our region. That's also contributing to the generation of plastic waste and microplastics and weathering process and so on, which also involving the leakage of the chemicals from the breakdown particles, synthetic textiles, personal care products, including toothpaste and microbeads in our personal care products, and then industrial processes, maritime activities, and the last one, consumer behaviors. This is always used by the industry, that we have to improve our behavior or and so on, but actually the behaviors of the consumers also dictated by the availability of products that we use. I found this paper also interesting because 8 out of 20 countries in the study are from our region, and it shows that our regions are the highest microplastics consumer. I put the quote in consumption because it's not directly consumed or ingested, but that's what the study and all the research shows, that we are consuming, eating plastics and microplastics every day through different kind of diets. And as you can see that in this chart below, Thailand has the highest microplastic residence rate. So it stays in our body for a long time. Also Malaysia and Indonesia. So it's quite alarming. On another paper, this is not about our region, but in general, plastic degraded in the terrestrial environment slower than in the ocean. It means the chemicals in microplastics also released slowly into the environment. And thanks to Joe for highlighting the agriculture and the food chain, supply chain, how plastics used in all supply chains of food and agriculture. And it shows that the chemicals in microplastics degraded slower in the soil. So this is like not pro and cons, but it's like a contrasting situation, that in the ocean it breaks down quicker, but it means it goes to our food chains, especially fish, quicker or faster than in terrestrial. But on the other side, in the terrestrial environment, in the soil, it's slower, but it means accumulated also in the soil. And then this is one of our findings study in Indonesia. We collected samples in cows, in cattle grazed in 2 landfills in Central Java. And we compared the microplastics content as well as the POPs in the samples. As you can see, that the type of plastics found in daging means meat, and then jeroan means visceral, and darah means blood. I'm sorry, I haven't translated into English, but so in the meat in Solo, the one the bottom part, this is from Central Java as well. They have high concentrations of PET, but in Semarang landfill, the PET found more in the visceral of the samples. So it means it's really ingested, and it's scary to see what we eat when we found this kind of evidence. It should be highlighted and regulated. So for the safety of our food, it's important to know. Although we are talking about microplastics, but I would like to highlight the findings of our landfill cows that we also detected high concentrations of dioxins like, and then also PBDs, flame retardants in the samples of the cow. So this is even more scarier if we think about the chemicals in that samples. So it's not only consisted of microplastics, but also chemicals in high concentrations. And if you're wondering why and how these POPs chemicals get into those cattle, I'll tell you that landfills get on fire a couple of times in a year. So you know that fire burning in the open burning in the landfill will release certain types of toxic chemicals and POPs. So there you go. And microplastics in seafoods, as highlighted by Joe, it's found also in many studies and the samples from our region. And that's not only in the gills of the fish, but also in the visceral and gastrointestinal tract of the fish that we consume. And then to add to our worry that microplastics also found in the atmosphere in our region, and there are several studies conducted in our region. One of this is from Surabaya. Yeah, Nina, Priggy, you can also start taking samples in the air, which is scary because you inhale it, and then this is also mixed with ultrafine particles in the air. So this is concentrations of microplastics in the air in the city of Surabaya, which is the capital of East Java. And as we found in many research that microplastics and other pollutants that we inhale also increase non-communicable diseases in human and affected by other factors. And this is the continuation of another microplastics in the atmosphere in our region. All mega cities also have microplastics in high concentrations depending on the seasons. So if we compare microplastics in the river, we can also see the comparisons that microplastics in every countries, the type of plastic dominated by PE, and our region are the largest producer of PE and wanted to be the leader of PE globally, competing with China. So and in the river, as I mentioned, so a lot of different type of plastics and fibers, including type of plastics that we can find, whether they found in the river in the form of pellets, films, or fiber. And of course, in human body, but it's a bit scary. So in our region, probably we need more studies to conduct to give recommendations. So finally, I think when we look at the status of microplastics in our region, it's already quite alarming. And unfortunately, we don't see a strong will of our government delegates in either here in BRS COPs or in the plastics treaty negotiations. But we hope that by reducing plastic productions and unnecessary consumptions, we can also prevent or slow down the productions of microplastics and pollutions. And then the important thing is that prohibiting the intentionally added microbeads and microplastics into products that will be helpful because that's also contributed to our personal care products and our use. And then to improve the design and lifetime for certain products that now popularly used as a reuse packaging. That's very important. And then promote the environmentally sound management of plastic waste. Of course, this is going to be the call of our government delegates asking for technical assistance and financial support. And then the toughest part is that to eliminate the toxic plastic chemicals and replace it with safer alternatives. Here in BRS, in Stockholm Convention, we also talk about the replacement or the alternatives to the toxic one, which is becoming the regretful substitute, because then after 10 years, we learn that these safer substitutes actually also has the same toxic characteristics as the previous one. That one is a tricky one. So we have to call for stronger regulations for toxic chemicals. And then, of course, enabling infrastructures consisted of EPR law, make sure that the packaging goes back to the recyclers and the supply chain, because they have all the infrastructures as well. So government just have to establish a supporting regulation for this. And the last but not least is the periodical monitoring, environment and biomonitoring, which will be tricky. But if we take a regular sampling, it will show how fast or how much the reduction from source can contribute to the improvement of microplastic exposure to human health. So thank you so much for listening. I'm sorry I cannot follow until the end, but if you have questions, just send me an email. Thank you. Back to you, Chinky.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ibu Yuyun. It's as I listen to the earlier speakers and to you, Ibu, it's really alarming to realize that we cannot separate the impacts of microplastics to the environment and to our health, because the studies that the speakers, you and the earlier speakers shared, say that, that while the microplastics are spreading in the environment, it also goes to our body and affect our overall health. And it's alarming. And yeah, thank you so much also for your recommendations, Ibu. No, I think we really need to do more, to exert more efforts to really address this. So there are policies, also citizen actions, and a lot more that we can also do. So thank you so much again, Ibu, and I wish you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry I have to leave. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you have questions and clarifications for Ibu Yuyun, please feel free to send us the message, and we can definitely ask Yuyun to answer those questions through email. So thanks again, Ibu. Bye for now. And we will now go to our next speaker. So as what I have said, the earlier speakers have already mentioned about the risks, no, and the impacts of microplastics, the plastics in general, and also the microplastics into our into the public health, no, our bodies. Now, we are also very fortunate that we have here our another speaker. He is a public health expert from the Ateneo Center for Research and Innovation in the Philippines. He will walk us through, to how exactly, or as a medical doctor also, this risks, and this microplastics are affecting our health. So I would like to request now Dr. Jemin Luis Apostol, or Doc Cello. Doc Cello, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, and you may take the floor now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chinky. And I'm also glad to our two previous speakers who have more or less alluded to to the health risks of exposure to microplastics, both direct and indirect health risks. And really, what I'd like to do today is really just to be able to summarize and synthesize available evidence on the health impacts of microplastics, both when we talk about like human health, but also in a broader sense, planetary health. But before I continue, and maybe just a bit of audience participation, let's take a moment to breathe. Inhale, exhale. Are we actually breathing? So yeah, I hope everyone took that opportunity to to have a bit of a breather, but also it might be sobering for you to know that in that moment that you breathe, you may have already inhaled approximately 2 to 20 microplastic particles per breath. And exposure through inhalation, exposure to microplastics through inhalation is one among the many exposure routes by which human populations encounter microplastics. Let's begin with sources. In many different settings, especially in archipelagic countries like the Philippines, our major source of microplastic exposure would be food and beverage, particularly consumption of seafood, but also bottled water or food that often comes in plastic packaging, followed by exposure in microplastics in drinking water, dust and air, contributed primarily by sources such as synthetic textiles, but also, as you will see later, tires. No, in the Philippines, actually, as in many other global South countries, microplastics in the air are actually find their origin from the wear and tear of car tires. In terms of exposure, microplastics enter the human body through many different routes. The most common would be through ingestion, but as also mentioned earlier, we can inhale microplastics, and also very, very small pieces of microplastics actually can be absorbed through the skin as well. And when they enter the human body, they can actually be very much disseminated systemically. A lot of it, of course, is concentrated in our gut, in our gastrointestinal system. But microplastics, over the past few years, especially for the past 3 to 5 years, we have seen a surge in bioexposure research to microplastics. And in fact, microplastics have been found in practically almost every organ in the human body. It has been found in a lot of it is in our gut, but it has also been found in our lungs and even in human placenta, which raises the concern of maternal fetal transfer of microplastics. So you have a mother, for example, that's exposed to microplastic, and eventually, microplastic in the mother's body can eventually be transmitted to the unborn fetus. As mentioned earlier, we've seen a surge in bioexposure research that have demonstrated microplastics in many different parts of the human body, including our reproductive organs, and of late, even in brain tissue and the placenta of unborn babies. So what actually happens to microplastics once they enter the human body? Before we talk about the health effects of microplastics, we first need to clarify what exactly are the health hazards when we talk about microplastics. And there are 3 levels. You have the microplastic particle in itself. And as mentioned by Joe earlier, you have the plasticizers. All of these different plastic additives and chemicals often added to the microplastic. And the third is that microplastics, especially microplastics in the environment, are like sponges. It means that it's very easy for different chemicals and even pathogens like bacteria and viruses to attach themselves to microplastic waste. So, it's a triple threat. We'd always say that when we talk about microplastics, we're actually talking about 3 different threats that come together: the microplastic particle, the additives, and whatever contaminants, both chemical and biological, that attach themselves to the microplastics. But let's talk about the microplastic particle in itself. So in terms of human health effects, physiological effects, as a physical particle, microplastics can lead to obstruction. But the most worrying aspect when it comes to microplastics would be the systemic inflammation and the oxidative stress that is triggered every time microplastic is introduced into human systems. As mentioned by Joe before, microplastics are foreign bodies. And as in any foreign body that enters the human body, these foreign bodies tend to trigger a series of systemic inflammation, irritation, and oxidative stress. But again, aside from the microplastic, we have an even more extensive uh, amount of evidence that establish the health effects of the additives that are often added to plastic products. And as mentioned earlier, there have been more than 13,000 identified additives associated with plastics, microplastics, 7,000, more than 7,000 analyzed for their hazardous properties, and at least 3,000 are of potential concern to human health. And we talk about chemicals such as flame retardants. You have your forever chemicals, the PFAS, your per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. You have biocides, you have bisphenols, you have phthalates, you have polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Each of these chemicals, already have established. Each of these plastic additives have already established health effects. And when we talk about the health effects of these plastic additives, a lot of them are actually endocrine disruptors. What that means is that they tend to mess up the normal functioning of our metabolic processes, which is why these plastic additives have been very much linked with metabolic disorders such as diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular diseases. They have also been linked with cancers, especially when we talk about your BPAs. Thyroid cancers in particular have been linked with phthalates and perfluoroalkyl substances. When we talk about phthalates, a huge body of evidence have linked phthalates with reproductive disorders, such as precocious puberty or improper development of reproductive organs. So really, and actually over the past 3 to 5 years, we have seen linkages between exposure to these plastic additives with a wide range of neurodevelopmental disorders across the life cycle, from poor and delayed neurodevelopment for children, higher risk for autism, all the way to higher risk for dementia and poor cognitive functioning in the elderly or later on in life. But really, just to synthesize, when we look at the most latest statement from the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization asserts that right now we cannot yet really assert fully and with certainty that exposure to microplastics, at least the microplastic particle in itself, without the additives, without all of the environmental contaminants attached to it. When we talk about the microplastic particle in itself, what the WHO asserts is that there's no evidence to indicate a human health concern. But really, this statement comes from the basis that we still do not have enough evidence yet to establish or to fully establish the human health risks. But I think what we need to remember is that the absence of evidence, which is where we are currently at right now, does not indicate the evidence of absence. And really just knowing that, and from a precautionary principle perspective, just really knowing that plastics don't really belong in the human body should be enough indication for us to do something about our continuing and increasing exposure to microplastics and to the health threats from plastic products overall. Very briefly, I'd also like to highlight, and I think our second speaker also alluded to the additional and secondary health effects of burning plastic waste. And it is unfortunate, and especially in global South countries like the Philippines, that many of our plastic wastes are actually burned improperly. And the burning of plastic, either through open burning or through what we call false solutions that are now gaining popularity in many different countries all over the world, actually does carry its own unique set of health risks. So burning of plastic releases and mobilizes a number of toxicants, everything from air pollutants, persistent organic pollutants like your dioxins and your furans, your polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, your PCBs, your brominated flame retardants that are mobilized and released every time we burn plastics, heavy metals, especially for particular plastic products or mixed plastic products, and acid gases like HCl, sulfur dioxide, hydrogen fluoride, and hydrogen bromide. And aside from the impacts of these toxicants and pollutants released every time we burn plastic, of course, from a human health perspective, you have both acute and chronic health risks and impacts from burning plastic. When we talk about acute health impacts, burning of plastic, and this is usually encountered especially in, informal waste communities wherein we see a high incidence of these acute health impacts like respiratory symptoms, neurological symptoms, and even gastrointestinal symptoms. But when we talk about, aside from the acute health effects, we also have chronic health effects. And just really focusing on some of the pollutants and toxicants released when we burn plastic, we have your dioxins and furans that have been linked with many multiple types of cancers as well as reproductive disorders, and even a wide body of evidence linking or establishing its impacts on the immune system and even on developmental issues for children. Heavy metals, a lot of them are neurotoxicants and can easily affect neurodevelopment, especially for vulnerable populations like children. You have your polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which really operate through DNA damage, thus has been linked with many different types of cancers. You have your volatile organic compounds, your particulate matter, your acid gases, and other air pollutants, your criteria air pollutants that are linked with both respiratory acute symptoms and also chronic diseases, non-communicable diseases, especially when we talk about long-term chronic exposure. Again, this is really just a reiteration of the many different toxic chemicals released by plastic burning. And you can see that these toxic chemicals released by plastic burning really exert a wide range of health effects, both acute and chronic. And I guess what I'd like to end with is, we talk about solutions, and I hope as we talk about solutions to the plastic crisis, I hope we tap into that we don't settle with what we call false solutions. I think at the end of the day, we need to reflect on the real root causes that has led to the plastic crisis, and therefore becomes incumbent upon us to really address these root causes if we are really to solve the plastic pollution crisis. And I think that's all the time that I have. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Doc Cello. Thank you for giving us more worries about the impacts, the health risks of microplastics. No, as you've said, no, there are already a lot of bioexposure researches revealing that microplastics are found in almost all parts of our body, and but the World Health Organization is also reminding us that for now there's no full evidence, no, that linking the plastics to to its direct impact to our health. But then I'm also I remember what you said, that, and I would like to reiterate it also, that plastics do not belong in the human bodies, no, and we have to seriously consider addressing all the causes of spreading more plastics in the environment and also to our body. And that yes, I also would like to emphasize what you've said, no, to reiterate what you've said, that we need to address the plastics, but the solutions that we should do should not be the false solutions like burning plastics, incinerations, and so on, that may cause more harm, no. Yeah, so thank you so much again, Doc Cello, for your insightful presentations, and of course we're learning a lot more, on the health risks of plastics. I'm checking the Q&A, so I'm seeing one question, but if it's okay with you, I think we can proceed now to the next set of speakers, and then later on we will have the open forum towards the end. No, so if you have questions now, please feel free to type your questions on the Q&A, and then later on in our open forum we will request our speakers to address, no, to respond to your questions. I hope it's okay with you. That's okay with you. Now we will proceed. No, we will proceed to our set of another or second set of speakers. We've requested representatives from the IPEN participating organizations in the region to share their insights, their ongoing initiatives at the local and national levels, and even their contribution to regional and global efforts, no, in addressing microplastics. So now I'm gonna request, I think first Maggie's, no, Maggie Suarez Sarangalingam, Sangaralingam. Maggie's, I'm sorry, I always make a mistake with your name. She is from the Sahabat Alam, Malaysia, no, or Friends for Earth, Malaysia. So Maggie's, could you please share your insights, no, on the policy and regulatory challenges and also opportunities for addressing microplastics in Malaysia, but also in the region, if you can also share. Thank you.
Hi, hello everyone. Calling in from Penang, Malaysia. So as you have heard from the speakers, microplastics are a growing concern for our environmental health and also human safety. Yeah, so microplastic pollution has become really an increasingly urgent pollution issue that requires regulatory and legislative action. Yeah, several countries have already taken action to address the issue. I will just name a few. So these actions are at state and national levels, and also policy measures are being taken at regional levels. These include bans on microbeads, or intentionally added microplastics. For instance, the first ban on microplastics in the US, it was passed in 2014 in the state of Illinois. It was a ban on microplastics in beauty products to prevent water pollution, yeah, especially to Lake Michigan. So this then paved way for the Federal Microbead Free Waters Act of 2015. This act prohibited the manufacturing, that it was as of 2018, and then distribution of non-prescription drugs that are also cosmetics and that contain plastic microbeads to, as Yuyun had also mentioned here, to exfoliate or cleanse any part of the human body. So besides that, the EU, they have made proposals related to plastic pellets. So these are also a form of microplastics. Yeah, and the EU has a goal of reducing up to 30% of microplastics in the environment by 2030. Why is this so? Plastic pellets are actually one of the largest sources of microplastics, and thousands of tons are released into the environment each year due to mishandling throughout the supply chain, and there has also been mishaps, yeah, during the transportation of these plastic pellets. Yeah, at the ASEAN level, microplastics are a key component of the ASEAN Regional Action Plan for combating marine debris. As you have heard from the other speakers, we in the ASEAN archipelagos, we have counted lots of thousands of tons of microplastics. Yeah. So at the ASEAN level, there are 5 policies at the regional level, and there are also policies in each of the ASEAN countries, like one in Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and in Vietnam there are 4 policies. So these policies, some are prohibitive measures, some are affirmative measures. So they employ a combination of some are regulatory, and also some are more of information-based policy instruments, such as research, technological innovation, awareness-raising campaigns, and all this to reduce the production, mismanagement, and also leakage of microplastics to the sea. In terms of prohibitive policies, these are regulations to ban microbeads in cosmetics, such as in Indonesia since 2019. Thailand also banned the import, production, and sale of cosmetics containing microbeads in 2020. As for Malaysia, there is a national marine litter policy and action plan, which plans to ban the most common or damaging types of plastic marine litter such as microbeads. So their target is to have this ban by 2028. That's still a long way to go. For East Asia, Taiwan has banned the use of plastic microbeads in cosmetic products, and it aims to be a single-use plastic-free country by 2030. So I have mentioned to you some of the policies, but there are also challenges. Yeah, you have also heard from the previous speakers just now. There are different sources of microplastic. So they are released either as a consequence of manufacturing the plastic pellets, the recycling of plastic waste, and then littering, disposal, and degradation of plastic waste, tire wear due to the abrasion against road surfaces, end of life tires. There are also artificial turfs, and from Joe, you have heard about microplastics in agriculture. So we have also done some research on plastic mulching, which is also leaching out microplastics. So all this, how are you going to legislate, yeah, in terms of reduction? So the microplastics emitted from textile products, yeah, this is the synthetic fibers, and vehicle tires, they remain largely outside of the scope of existing policy frameworks. Yeah, despite they're also accounting for a substantial share of release of microplastics into the environment. So you've heard about all this. So what is the way forward? The way forward, as mentioned by a lot of our speakers, including Yuyun and Therese, it is on preventive options. Yeah, it should be early in the life cycle of plastics at the upstream level. So in terms of manufacturing of plastic products, including textiles and tires. So the precautionary principle is the most effective mitigation measure. This is in terms of the production itself. Yeah. So we also need to improve product design and manufacturing, and implementing mitigation best practices during the use, because we are also using a lot of plastics. Yeah. So we also need to be mindful in terms of the use and consumption of plastics. So all these can substantially reduce emissions. On the whole, we need to reduce plastic production, as more production equates to more pollution, including generation of microplastics. We also need stringent regulation and enforcement at national level and at the global level via the Global Plastics Treaty. As Therese has also mentioned, this is a global problem, so we do need to have a global solution. So we have to live a cleaner and toxic-free world for our future generation. And as Nina mentioned here, so she is our future generation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maggie, for summarizing all the policy existing and also the challenges now of existing policies, and also calls for more more stringent policies, no, that should exist and should be fully implemented in the countries in our region and also beyond, no. And of course, the very important also is that there should be like global regulation, no, and global reduction of production of plastics. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And we will request another representative from IPEN participating organizations, this time from Thailand. I will now request Yam or Salisa Chai PP0 what? Sorry, Yam. If you can also share with us, you know, your organization's initiatives, and I know that you also have been very active in engaging the policymakers in your country, and also very active in participating in the ongoing global plastic treaty negotiations. So I will now request you also to share. Yam, the over to you. The floor is yours now. Thank you.
Thank you, Shingi, and thank you. I'm just gonna turn my fan away for a bit. Thank you for all the speakers for your insightful knowledge. I actually take down so many notes myself, learning a lot from here. So today I'm just gonna showcase the movements that we're doing in Thailand and how we're engaging policymakers in addressing plastic pollution and also including microplastics, and using the case study from what Environmental Justice Foundation, EJF, we teamed up with the Bangkok Metropolitan Administration of BMA under the project called Bottle Free Seas. So as everybody has already said, microplastics are the plastics that we can't see, but it comes from what we can see. So, the macroplastics that we use or produce or even try to avoid in our everyday life. And plastic bottles are like the number one litter found on Thai beaches, and I'm pretty sure on other beaches as well. In each bottle contains hundreds and thousands of microplastics. So with that in mind, we teamed up with BMA, and knowing that they have this one specific policy, not related to plastics, but they would love to improve access to drinking water as one of their main policies. So together, we propose that let's just install 10 water stations, public water stations, as easy as it is in Bangkok, and let's map the existing water stations that is also already available in the city to create that refill infrastructure for Thai citizens and also tourists and also visitors to be able to, because plastics is everywhere, and one thing that we can get rid of in everyday life with the infrastructure is plastic bottles, and also clean and quality drinking water is also part of one of the basics human rights. So let's start off from there. And with just the 10 stations, now each station can reduce approximately 10,000 bottles per month. And so right now we're reaching 2 years, and we're reaching already 2 million bottles reduction from only installing 10 stations. And the stations look like this, behind me. So that's the station we installed in one of the major parks in Bangkok. So that what it showed us is that safe and public water access is possible, and people will use it if it's available. And that can also be part of a wider plastic reduction efforts as well. And from that success, BMA now committed and also inspired. They are going to install 200 more water refill stations on their own investment. And they are also committed to scale up 5,000 water stations citywide by 2028, through any mechanisms that they can come up with, either from the state funding or public and private partnership. So, it's something that still blows my mind every day, that how just 10 stations can all spark like a citywide expansion and scaling up of water stations that people can rely on, and also switched towards a more reuse and refill infrastructure and ecosystems in Bangkok, and hopefully in Thailand in the future. And so these are some of the lessons learned and policy messages that we learned from doing with this initiative with BMA. We think that policymakers are more likely to act when they see real examples that work. And so BFS just showed that it's possible to reduce plastics and offer practical system alternatives. But something that we learned from this is that, and it needs to be indicated here, that not all reuse systems are created equal, and some feature still toxic materials and that are hard to recycle. So what we learned here is that we need a reuse and refill infrastructure, but we need the systems that are safe, sustainable, and don't just shift problems to around, basically. And I agree with other speakers that plastic pollution must start upstream. If we really want to address the issue, we need to cut plastic production and not just managing the waste that comes from it. Refill and reuse systems are a great example, especially when backed by public trust and government support. And with the Global Plastics Treaty that is coming up, one of the lessons learned as well that we have now is that circular economy, like Joe said, is deeply linked with recycle. But does circular economy or circularity has to mean recycling? Can it also mean the reuse and refill infrastructure and systems that has been existed for centuries? And with the safe ones as well, so for us, we see that the Global Plastics Treaty should include the article dedicated to expansion of this, and it's not just the reuse that put the burden on consumers. If you live in Southeast Asia, you probably have seen, the fried chicken box, encouraging people to use that as plant pots. That's not the reuse that we're asking for. We are asking for a system where providers, producers can take back their own container, the safe containers without toxic materials, to refill and then commercialize again, or a system where public consumers can use their own containers that they rely on to refill the products. So just to wrap up my presentation, the fight against microplastics and plastic pollution required more than awareness. It requires infrastructure, leadership, and real system alternatives. And by showing what works, we can bring together policymakers along and then turn this small action into big change. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, just leave them in the comment section.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to know that how local initiatives, like the reuse and refill system, that is not new, right? No, it's been practiced, can help contribute in preventing or limiting the plastic pollution. And as you've said, I really like it, that implementing safe, sustainable local solutions, is very important while we are working, on the global production reduction, while we are working on a strong and meaningful plastic treaty. So thank you so much, Yam. And yeah, we are now into the last speaker. So Prigi from Ekoton, Indonesia. He is the manager of science, arts, and communication. He's also the founder of Ekoton. And we have requested Prigi to share the importance of citizen science initiatives in addressing microplastics, and of course, why we need to sustain this kind of initiative, because I know that Ekoton, Prigi's team, and Ekoton as an organization has been doing a lot of local initiatives, especially on microplastics monitoring. So Prigi, please take the floor now.
Okay, thank you, Chinky. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm happy to sharing our experience to how to campaign about the microplastic. In the picture, you can see how we so many people, so many youth, so many activity, how we involve community to know, to understand about the microplastic. So in September 2024, Ecoton submit the result of the citizen science-based study to the Ministry of the Environmental, urging the establishment of microplastic quality standard in water and recycling industry. This research was conducted across 68 rivers throughout Indonesia and include compilation of study of microplastic found in the fish, sediment, and freshwater organism. And we are involved more than 80 community surrounding Indonesian river. So we call it a mystic scan as a tool of to introduce a microplastic contamination in the river. At Ecoton, we began using microplastic as a campaign material in 2017 when we discovered that the rivers in our province had turned into dumping ground with 40% of the waste consisting of disposal diapers, and 60% is sachet, 10% is styrofoam, 10% is a plastic bag, cup, and bottle plastic. I thought that something was needed to make people afraid to throw plastic waste into the river. That's when we found that microplastic had a potential to harm human health and aquatic life. So I will share about the Mystic Scan. So you can scan this guideline. So in the guideline, you will see how and what we must do to operate the Mystic Scan. Yeah. So how can it be developed? So one is utilize a low-cost equipment. Two is a simple to implement, and then scalable for mass application. 4 is provide a rapid result, because using this tool only 30 minutes to 1 hour we can know about the what kind microplastic that we found in our river. Yeah. Number 5 is direct relevant to the daily life. So because in Indonesia 80% our drinking water sources came from the river, so river is very important for us. So yeah, we measure the microplastic in the river. Yeah. So number 6 is can be integrated with the other activities. Okay. Okay, tada! This is our tool. Yeah, this you know, you can use can is from metal. In the beginning, we try using a paralon, yeah, PVC, but we don't like this because it will be contaminate our water. So we using a can from the metal. The filter screen too is came from metal too, yeah. So this is cheap, very cheap. You can using every can, yeah. And number 2 is the expense, not expensive, is because we can buy is 2000 yeah 20, yeah, $20 to $200. You can buy the binocular stereo microscope, yeah. So this is a Mystic Scanner component. So one is aluminum can, serve as the main body of the channel for the filtering system. Number 2 is a metal filter. Is we call it 300 mesh. Is mean in 1 inch there is a 300 wire. Yeah. And number 3 is elastic fastener, because you must put the metal filter in the aluminum can. Yeah. And number 4 is a liter water container, is function as the water source for raising the sampling collection. Number 5 is a petri dish or sample collector. After you take sample from the aluminum can, so you can take is more than one, can be 10 liter or 100 liters. So you can collect the water is through the metal filter, and then the metal filter you put the sediment, the material in the metal filter to the petri dish, and then we need a binocular microscope enable to viewing the microscopic particle. Yeah, these microscope are wide available online and come in various model. The cheaper is $20. Model is can be connected with the smartphone for easy viewing. So it's in this one. So there is a small lens, and we will connect direct with our handphone. And number 2 is a $100 model. We can connect with the screen. If you buy $100 model, is they will come with the screen, yeah, with the monitor, small monitor, 8 inch, and then with the $200 microscope, we can get the more bigger microscope with the camera and direct connect with the LCD monitor. So okay, yeah. To make this is more attractive, so we integrate with the other activity, like in the screen you can see how we integrate with the exhibition. So we visit village, we visit school, we visit yeah, village along the river. So we establish exhibition like this to show that the bottle we produce, yeah, everyone produce every years. So and then we ask the women group and youth to took sample from the river. In this picture, you can see how is a woman group take a 100-liter sample from the river, and then they collect, and then they filter with our mystic scan, and then direct we can see the result using a microscope and connect with the big screen. Yeah, it's a 50-inch. This is very important to sharing the real situation of the water that they drink or that we using every day for daily activity. And then in the screen you can see how we combine because the size of the microplastic is same with the plankton, so we split with the two group, yeah, and then one group is measure the plankton and one group is measure the microplastic. So is what is our background is I think to increase public participation is information about the microplastic is especially content relevant to the community must be provided continuously. Digital science is a activity is a powerful way to connect emotionally with people because it is conduct on a regular basis. Yeah. So before us introduce Mystic Scan, so we produce the information to share the explain, yeah, what is a microplastic, what the impact, and what is the source of microplastic. Microplastic is come from the macroplastic, from the single-use plastic that we use, and from the bottle that we dispose to the water, and then we do research by us and ask the community to follow what we do, that we measure the microplastic in the water, in the air together with them, and then after that we repeat, and then we inform them to do research for themselves, yeah, and then to make this activities become viral, so we connect with the other activity with the exhibition. So and then some people writing letter to the governor to make people informed, and then to feel the that we are in dangers, we are as a victim of the microplastic. So these become I think the most important way is to use this tool is because it's cheap and then easy and everyone can do it. And then for the polymer validation testing, we using FTIR analyze, and we can conduct, we collaborate with the university laboratory for FTIR testing at cost is $10 per 10 gram of sample. So yeah, I think it's yeah, we must provide some fund, yeah, a small fund to get a validation that what we measure is a real plastic. Yeah. And then one tips is like plastic is different with organic another organic matter, yeah, because plastic is colorful. So when we found fiber, there is a blue one, red one, yeah. So different with the wood, yeah, is brown and black. And another different is the microplastic is elastic, so difficult to break down in the small part. So I think Mystic Scan is a easy tool to make people more understand, yeah, to make them know that we are impacted by a microplastic. Okay, thank you. Please try this at home is not dangerous, is happy. So we can not just only become a consumer of information about the microplastic, you can produce information about the microplastic using our Mystic Scan. If you want to do more about the Mystic Scan, you can call us, and or you can visit our website, yeah, www.echotun.org.it. Okay, thank you. Kinky.
you. Thank you so much, Bapa Prigi, for sharing your local initiative, but at the same time, very good, no? Very good initiative, no? I've been following all your work on microplastics, and it's really amazing how you do it, no? And hopefully that we can maybe organize more learning sessions in the future on microplastics so that other POs and also other partners no in our region will learn more no on how you do the microplastic monitoring and also how you inform no you communicate your
Yeah.
results no to other people to increase the awareness of the people on microplastics. So
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you so much again. And now we will go to the Q&A session. So if you have questions, please feel free to type them on the Q&A chat box. So I think there are already questions here. So there's a question on bioplastic. It's how bioplastic becomes a full solution. And Therese, you've answered it. I've seen that you've already answered it on the Q&A, but if you can also expand further on it, please.
Sure, of course. So bioplastics, the term bioplastics is used in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it's used to indicate something that would be biodegradable. Sometimes it's used for plastics that are made from bio-based materials. And for the ones that are biodegradable, they're often only biodegradable under very specific conditions. So they're not actually biodegradable in nature, but just in like industrial composts. And for bio-based plastics, they might still come with, they may be made from something else than fossil fuels, but they are still they can sort of be the same as normal plastics. It's just that they're made from a different starting material. So tests have shown that in terms of toxicity, they come with very much the same concerns. They show very similar toxicity as conventional plastics. So that would be my answer to it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Therese. So there's another question here on yeah, so there's a question. So I'm going to read it. Is it appropriate to say that studies on microplastics detection in the environment are already well established? And consequently, would you rather say that we should already conduct studies on microplastics treatment or degradation? Who would like to answer it? I know Teresa already responded, but Joe, would you like to respond to that? Or any speakers if you want.
Yes, I mean, I could just say a couple of words on this, but maybe others will have stuff to say as well. Yeah, I mean, I would say that microplastic evidence in the detection in the environment is well established now. There's different tools. As I said, there's a huge growing body of literature on this. I don't think that should mean that we shouldn't continue to work on that, because obviously the diversity of sources and how different plastics behave under different conditions in different contexts is really important. In terms of studying degradation, that's also happening. There's a lot of work on degradation, and there's a lot of work on how different conditions affect how plastics degrade. We heard earlier Yuan looking about comparison between aquatic environments and like terrestrial environments, and how microplastics break down at different rates depending on their surroundings. In terms of treatment, I mean, I hesitate to it's really, this is like type of remediation type studies looking at how do you, this is like the last resort really, isn't it? It's like trying to get microplastics out of the environment. Would be hugely expensive, probably, very difficult to do, and just nowhere near as effective as trying to, stop the flow of them in the first place, or to change the complexity of plastics and simplify, the chemical complexity of them. But yes, there is evidence on all those things emerging. People are looking at remediation, and but yeah, maybe I don't know if anyone else would have something else to say on this.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. So we still have a few questions left here. Sorry, we're running out of time now. We're running over time. But I hope you're okay in answering more questions. One question is also on microplastics having found in snow and water samples. No, so the question is here because there's also, of course, a need to clean like high mountain, no plastic pollution, downstream marine plastic pollution, and it's also impossible, no? But how can we address these concerns? What do you think? The legacy plastic pollution, that the plastic pollution that are already like in snow, high mountains, marine. So what do you think of this? How can we really, can there be really solutions in cleaning this up? What do you think? Who would like to say something or respond? Would you like to say some words, Therese? Sorry for putting you.
No, I can jump in. I just wanted to give a chance to any of the other speakers to also chime in on this. So I think this is a very relevant question. This is not just only under the Plastics Treaty, because under the Plastics Treaty, I feel like we haven't really gotten to that level of detail in the conversations yet. So it's not so surprising that that hasn't been discussed there. But overall, when we look at plastics, I do agree that this is a sort of it's a topic that is not being talked a lot about, that it's not just about marine pollution. This is something that we see on land, and we see it in mountains, and the issues are very much similar. And I would also say that the solutions are quite similar in terms of, as many speakers have mentioned, the importance of working preventively. Of course, cleanup is important, but it's never going to be as efficient as preventing it ending up there in the first place. And doing so will require a lot of different actions, including decreasing the amount of plastics that we produce. But I agree that this is an important topic, and I do hope that it's something that will be discussed more under future policy measures. But for the Plastics Treaty, I think we haven't quite gotten to that level of detail yet.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Hopefully this will also be discussed now, because like in our region, this is really visible pollution also. But of course, also equally important, the invisible plastic pollution, the toxic chemicals. But yeah, in our region, the visible plastic pollution, those are already in the environment and ecosystems. But yeah, hopefully this will also be seriously discussed in the negotiations. Thank you, Therese. I will request now Doc Cello to answer also another question here. So the question is, if plastic has already entered the human body, for example, microplastics from disposable medical items like face masks, how can we remove it or minimize its impact on health? And also many medical tools, such as disposable face masks, are made from plastic and are in direct contact with the nose or skin. So how can we reduce plastic contact in medical care? And what are some more safer or more sustainable alternatives to plastic-based tools? Well, there's a lot of questions for you, Doc Jello. And finally, what alternatives are there to incinerating medical waste, which often releases toxic substances? Are there safer, more eco-friendly methods for handling medical plastic wastes? Doc Jello? Yeah. So while waiting for Doc Cello, we can also read another question here. There's another question in the Q&A. Questions, not just one question. What may be possible ways to quantify financial impact from plastic crisis? Wow. Both from actual impacts like health impacts or impacting photosynthesis and thus agricultural output, as well as regulatory changes. Example, the possible global plastic budget that may make plastic industries into big stranded assets. So are there some corporate environmental assessment asking about plastic risk estimations, ideas regarding the quantification would be great to person. So yeah, so there are questions and also insights, but who would like to respond? Joe, I can see you smiling. Would you like to respond?
No, it's a great question. There's just a lot in there to. I mean, I can say something briefly about health, like, and agriculture, just as an example. You know, there we are seeing studies coming out that are trying to quantify costs, public health costs related to plastics. You may have seen some of, for instance, Leo Trasan's work in USA, looking at, you know, just 4 groups of chemicals that are common in plastics, like phthalates and PFAS and things like that. And I think they estimated it around $250 billion annually, the cost associated with public health costs and loss of worker, you know, ability to work through illness, which is about 1.2% of the GDP of the US. And this is just for 4 groups of chemicals in plastics, that is. So, and that's just one element, obviously. Then you talk about costs on food production, you know, in where food is concerned, and this is actually a figure that I don't think includes much or if anything on plastics, but the FAO did some estimates in the last couple of years on the costs, the hidden costs of unhealthy diets, and they estimated that it is cost around $9 trillion globally. And so this is just the public health and the environmental costs of the way we produce food. And I'm fairly certain that there is very little in way of plastics captured in that assessment. So if you bring plastics into that and what we know about impacts on food production, on the environment, and, you know, all these things we were talking about earlier, it's likely to be much higher. And because these are sort of hidden costs, then, you know, and the costs really should be borne, in my opinion, by those who are profiting from this system, um, then yes, that's how we need to. I think we need to uncover some of these things first. There is some work going on from actually some of our colleagues. Megan Deeney, who I work with closely, is working on the global health costs of the full life cycle of plastics, looking at disability adjusted life years. So that's sort of years lost to morbidity in life as well. And that's going to be coming out in the next sort of 6 months. But yeah, we need more. We need more of this kind of stuff to move policymakers, don't we, into action. Sadly, the money is the what talks.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. As much as we want to cater more questions, we are really over time. So I'm really sorry. If you have questions, please feel free to email me, no, or I can share your questions with the speakers, and then hopefully, yeah, in the future we can have another webinar or learning session on microplastics, as we've realized today that while we already know a lot of information about microplastics, we also have to know more. There is still a lot of information that we need to understand more. So yeah, I think we can organize another learning session on microplastics, based also on the discussions now today and also with the questions that you've raised. So yeah, I'm so sorry that we have to end the Q&A now. I think to wrap up, maybe some important takeaways lang for today's discussion. One is that microplastics are everywhere in the soil, water, food, and even in our bodies. And two, health impacts are emerging but need urgent and precautionary attention. Third, we need stronger national, regional policies, and even global coordination. No? We need to strengthen also our collaborative efforts in addressing this important issue of microplastics that are affecting the environment and human health. And then we've also learned a lot of local initiatives like citizen science, youth activism with Nina with us today, local actions, local solutions that are crucial, no, in pushing for change and also solutions that we need, no, in order to address this global problem that is affecting, no, all of us from the local, national, regional, and also international. You know, it affects all of us. And we've also realized, no, we've also learned, no, from the questions that we listen in the answers that that from our speakers, that there are also a lot of studies that we can also do more studies to understand more, like of course addressing more plastic pollution, chemicals, and also the financial, how do we really address this global plastic pollution, including the microplastics. So I'm really sorry, but thank you. Thank you so much that everyone for the speakers, for your insightful presentations, for the information that you've shared with us this afternoon. Thank you so much, everyone, to all the attendees, and of course to our co-organizers. Thank you so much. And I think that ends our webinar today. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Bye, Chinky. Thank you.